This is Rick Thomas. Thank you for joining me for this video. You can find more of our resources at rickthomas.net, where we are helping people live effective lives. In this video, I want to walk through the process of change. How do we change? What are the components of the change process? And so let's start with a text. The primary text is Paul's template for change in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 22, 23, and 24. This is a primary discipleship text where Paul said we are to put off the old person that has our former manner of life. The way that we used to live is now brought into our sanctification experience with the Lord, and Paul says we need to learn how to put that off. Verse 23 says that we are to renew our minds, and in that verse we see the internal dynamic that is necessary for change. And then in verse 24, he says we are to put off. And so the process of change is, in a simplified way of saying it, a three-step process. Put off the old person, renew your mind, and put on the new person that is made like Christ. Now, in order to do that, first of all, I want to set up the discipleship context. All discipleship contexts have four component parts. Of course, the primary part is the person who wants to change. And so if you want to change, you are part of that dynamic, and the process of change is always targeting your heart. Now, another important piece of the change process, another component of the discipleship dynamic, is the Word of God. That is our tool, the all-sufficient words of God, our Bible. That is the tool in our toolbox that we go to in order to learn how to change. And then, of course, change always happens in community. As we immerse ourselves with the discipler or a discipleship community that helps us to walk through the process. But the discipler is not the primary counselor in any change process. The primary counselor is always the Spirit of God. The Spirit of God is the change agent. He is the one that brings change to our life. He is the counselor with a capital C. He is the person that brings change. The people in the process are secondary. God uses people to communicate His word, but ultimately it's the person with the big heart here engaging the Spirit of God, and the Spirit of God bringing that change. And so those are the four component parts of all discipleship contexts. Now, the process of change, it always begins with a situation. In the years that I have been counseling people, I've never had a person come in and tell me what their problem is, as far as their primary problem. What they always describe to me is the situation that they are in. For example, they will say, my marriage is falling apart. Their marriage falling apart is what is happening to them, but that is not the primary problem. That is not the root cause. And so if you want to help them to change, you have to go under the surface of the situation. And again, they will always tell you what's going on, but they won't tell you what the true problem is. And so you want to begin asking questions. You want to find out what they are doing, what has been going on that has created this problem of for example, your marriage falling apart. He may say, I yell at my wife. Now, that is much better data than saying my marriage is falling apart. If he came in and said, I have been yelling at my wife, then I would probably say your marriage is falling apart or it's about to. And so you want to get underneath the surface, but you also need to find out more than what the individual has been doing, you also want to get into his thought processes. Notice what's going on here. We are moving toward the heart because Paul said in Ephesians 4 that we must renew our minds. So he tells me what the situation is. I began asking questions. What have you been doing? What's going on? And he tells me all of these things, 10, 15 things that have been going on that's created this situation. But I want to get into his thought processes. Why do you think this way, which motivates you to respond that way, which causes this situation? Ultimately, what I am asking him are about the motivations of his heart. What is motivating you? Now, he could say something like, when I don't get my way, I respond this way. And so what we find out about this individual is that he has to be in control. He has to do things his way. And if things aren't going his way, he thinks that he is out of control. Therefore, he responds in such a way. And of course, it always creates a kind of situation that he really does not want. But the motivations of his heart are wrong, and he needs to renew his mind. Now, as a competent discipler, you want to work him through his poor motivations, and you want to give him another kind of motivation. And a good way to think about it in this short video here is the two great commandments. He needs to love God and love others more than himself. So his motives currently are self-centered. You want to help him to have God-centered motives, and then what will happen is that his thoughts will begin to change in a more positive way. And as his thoughts change, he will be responding differently, and then, of course, his situation will change as well. Now, that's Paul's process of changing. Remember that what they tell you on the front end is not what the real problem is. You want to work them back to the motivations of their heart so they can change them to God-centered motivations. You use the Word of God to do that, the community of God, and then you pray to God that the counselor, capital C, the Spirit of God will show up and bring the conviction and the illumination that the person needs so they can be empowered to change their thoughts, their responses, and hopefully their situations will change. This is the process of change in Ephesians 4, 22 through 24. If you want to know more information about this and how to do it, if you would like training, this is what we do. You can go to rickthomas.net. You can contact us, and we would be glad to help you to live a more effective life. Thank you for watching the video.